What are the opportunities that we, as UX professionals, have to get engaged in making those processes better? So we're going to talk about what's wrong today. We're going to talk about some observations, some potential ways to make the systems better. And finally, we're going to talk a little bit about building the influence that we need in order to be in that room and have those conversations. What about things like recommendation engines, things that tell you, what this customer might be interested in buying? Or optimizing engagement, things like an Instagram does, or most content organizations. We just want to keep you in the app for a while. Pricing strategies, dynamic, personalized pricing strategies that predict how much you would be willing to pay for something. Altering images. It could be as simple, if you're at Home Depot, of being able to show how a particular paint might weather over time. Now we start to get into the newer stuff, generating new copy for marketing purposes or on-site purposes, or customer support, AI-supported chatbots, for example. My point is, I bet almost every one of us works for an organization that is using this technology at some level now, right? It's not just the big guys. It's not just the super cutting-edge people. So these are the kinds of things that we should be ready to be engaged with. And how do those go wrong? How do even those relatively simple, straightforward things go wrong? Well, for example, if you build an algorithm to predict whether or not someone who's been charged with a criminal offense will recommit a crime, then the algorithm, based on the way that people have judged others in the past, is going to guess that you're much more likely to recommit a crime if you have more melanin in your skin, even though in reality, when they've tested that hypothesis, it's really not true. Tinder got in some trouble recently because they were exploring personalized dynamic pricing to see how much you would be willing to pay for their app. And they charged quite a bit more to people who were over the age of 30, because apparently we're a lot more desperate, than people who were under 30, and they got slapped with an age discrimination suit. AI is increasingly being used in order to help companies sift through the sometimes thousands of resumes that they get and identify those that they think would be a good fit with their existing culture. But what's the problem with that, right? Past hiring practices, number one, might have had inherent biases that they're not aware of. But it also means that you're just perpetuating the same old thing. You're not increasing the diversity of output. You're not exploring new people who could be adding new things to your organization. And finally, apparently, if you want to look more professional, the secret is to look more white. So this is a recent headline in which a young Asian woman asked for generative AI help, and this was the suggestion that they gave her for how to look more professional. So what's going on here at the bottom, at the end of the day? It's simply that AI is a pattern recognition system based on historic data, and any biases or omissions that existed in the past will not just be perpetuated, but as someone mentioned yesterday, amplified going forward. So how can we keep that from happening, and how vigilant do we actually need to be? I don't work on those kinds of things. I'm not trying to judge who's going to recommit, reoffend, right? I'm just, maybe I'm a grocery store, right? Maybe I'm a grocery store, we're known for fresh produce. We just want to use AI to pick new locations based on what we've done in the past. Can anybody suggest, this is interactive, can you suggest a potential issue with that? Just throw it out. What's that? Food deserts. Anybody heard of urban food deserts, right? So if you didn't serve that area in the past, maybe it was explicitly or implicitly redlined, then as Gavin mentioned yesterday, that data is just not in the system. So you're never going to have it magically predict that that would be beneficial for you, right? What about a home sales website that says, hey, we want to help you, estimate the value of your home based on what other homes in your area have sold for? Redlining, and in modern days, like just recently, within the last couple of years, there was a successful lawsuit by a black family that said the appraisal on my home is vastly below what it should be. And so researchers looked into it and realized that the same home, the same neighborhood characteristics, if you're in a predominantly white neighborhood compared to one that is 50% black, the appraisal will automatically come in 20% lower. All right? Now, I don't know the answer to this because those biases do still exist. I'm not saying this would be evil. I'm saying we should be aware of the fact that we are perpetuating a discriminatory way of valuing those things. So how might we do it better? Well, first let's talk a little bit about how things work today. A machine learning product, one that, let's say, the user interface might not change visibly, depending on how the algorithm changes, okay? Everything is happening behind the scenes. Those teams don't look like or act like the teams that we typically work on today, the ones where the designers and the data scientists and the content folks all come together. Very frequently, it's basically an engineer and a data scientist. And they get together on a Monday morning and they say, so, got any ideas on what we should test this week? Something that might move the needle? And they go back and forth and they generate a few hypotheses, and the data scientist probably has a couple of things that they've been looking at. And then they say, great, let's grab some data. Let's see, pull the last 6 months worth of data, last year's worth of data. Hey, maybe we'll pull North America because that's real clean and we don't have to do any rejiggering, massaging of the data. And let me just, I'm going to create this change in the weight in the algorithm. I'm going to change what we reward in the model. And let's, hey, DS, why don't you, data scientist DS, why don't you go ahead and come up with a evaluation plan to see how much of a difference we need to have to be statistically significant, how long it has to run, how many people have to be in it, and then let's see whether or not we move the needle, right? Well, what's wrong with this system? For one thing, as my friend Lisa Dance, who is an AI ethicist, likes to ask, who's not in the room when this happens? Well, for one thing, almost all of us, right? We're not in that room. And our customer, in the sense of being actively considered and represented, is not in that room. And the process is a truncated process, one that tends to default to rather tactical ideas and that are not vetted more broadly. The visioning and the ideation based on prioritized business and user needs just kind of goes out the window because this will be so fast and easy and cheap, and we're just going to kind of run a bunch of experiments and then we'll let you know if any of them look interesting, okay? Does that sound familiar to anybody here? Anybody have a group in their company that seems to work this way? I kind of double-checked with some of the other speakers over the last few days, and this is a fairly common scenario. So where might we play? Well, we'd start by being in the room, right? So one of the areas where we can add enormous value is making sure that we're focused on the right goals and opportunities, right? We are grounded in a deep understanding of our users, their needs, their obstacles, the things that are still opportunity areas. And that's something that, bear in mind, we should be the most knowledgeable people in the organization about those things, right? So that is value we can bring in. Another value that we can bring in is the ability to help ideation sessions, the ability to lead design sprints. Technologies that data science and engineering are not expert in, right? And I guarantee you that afterwards, they feel excited about the new ideas that hadn't occurred to them, the new insights that they hadn't realized could potentially be something to explore about those users. But we have to be in there sharing things and getting them excited in order to have a role there. All right, next I mentioned the training set and choosing the set of data. The training set is the sample data used in the training process of machine learning, deciding which sites or databases and over what time period we should be using in order to look for patterns, right? Today, this is very frequently what we would call in research a convenience sample, right? It's what's the cleanest, most convenient, readily available data, the minimum size that data science tells us we're going to need to get statistically significant results. But here's the thing. AI depends on data. The data behind the algorithm is at least, if not more important, than the algorithm itself. And yet it's an area that in the current process is not really considered, examined, discussed in a robust way. We are the foremost experts in what it will take to win the minds and hearts of our users. We should add value to this process. No one is closer to the user than you are. And also remember that sometimes just asking the right question is an important contribution, all right? With the things that we talked about, I believe we can achieve a mind meld with our data science and engineering partners. We can anticipate and track potential issues, and we can defend our users. But I can tell that a couple of you still look kind of scared. You're like, Kathryn, I want to be up there, but I feel like I'm alone, all right? I want to tell you, you're not alone. There are key partners. If you're at a large organization, they might be within your company. If you're at a smaller one, they might be external organizations that you consult. But there are people that specialize in these issues, people that specialize in developing the tools, teaching you the right questions to ask, arming you with the information that you need to make your case. We've been talking exclusively about AI for most of my talk, but there's also an area called trust and safety. Trust and safety is the other kinds of bad experiences that you can have, things like misinformation, right? Now, that could be amplified and spread through AI, but it also is just a problem in and of itself, right? There's an organization called the Integrity Institute. It's a selection process membership organization of people who have worked in integrity for the platforms. I am a member of that. And so just to give you an idea, one of the decks that what we help to inform legislative leaders and their staff on issues, but we also create playbooks for smaller organizations to read and get ideas for how they might prepare for problems that they don't have internal resources dedicated to. So for example, one is DSA, around transparency, okay? It's helping you understand the different levels of transparency that you might provide, the pros and cons, and how other companies are handling it. We're also working on a playbook for preparing for the 2024 election cycle, okay? For example, Discord, all right? There are platforms out there that up until maybe the last year or so didn't think that they were involved with political discourse. But if you have any kind of community communications options within your product, there are ways in which you could become involved in political discourse, misinformation, bullying, those kinds of things. So Integrity Institute is an organization that you can go to periodically and say, hey, do they have any resources along these lines? That is it for me, folks. Thank you very much, and I'm really looking forward to hearing your questions.